So the latest episode of My Hero Academia became the #1 trending on social media. This truly makes me happy, as someone that has been patiently waiting for the events to unfold for this very moment we got in the latest episode. It pleases me greatly just to see the popularity of this episode, many praising this episode, and some even saying that this potentially could be the best episode of My Hero Academia yet. Now, personally, I had to take a moment to think about all the great episodes that stand out to me, that I have watched throughout the 4-season run of My Hero Academia. And the episodes that really do stand out are the All for One versus All Might scene. It's the All Might versus the Nomu in Season 1. We have the Stain stuff towards the end where he saves Izuku and all that, and he looks menacingly at every other hero, and they just fear and they kind of step backwards. Or the scene with, let's say, Izuku versus Muscular. There is a lot of fantastic episodes that we have gotten, even, Izuku versus Bakugo. And after comparing every single individual episode and thinking about it, and really just saying what truly brought me so much emotion, it comes down to 3 different episodes. And that is the episode with All Might versus All for One, for obvious major message there. I mean, the 2 major symbols of both representing sides fall. And then you have, Izuku versus Muscular, which is literally Izuku becoming a true hero, the man actually stepping up to save somebody. And then you have this episode, the latest episode that represents a major milestone of the series, showcasing what Izuku is truly capable of at 100%. So after looking at all 3 of these, this might be my favorite episode so far of My Hero because of just what it represents for the story and also what could happen next. So to get right into it, this is our first time ever seeing Izuku at 100%. Now, I know you're going to correct me and say, but Chibi, he's used 100% before and he's broken his arms and legs. Yes, okay, technically he has, but I'm talking about a consistent usage of 100%, something that we have not seen yet from him. And we have never really seen All Might truly be in his prime and use his maximum power while he doesn't have a timer. This episode kind of gives us some insight on what All Might is capable of, or was capable of, and what Izuku is capable of, and how he could fundamentally, potentially even surpass what we saw within this episode as the story continues on. This is kind of like a peek into the future of what our main character is going to do. So, the consistent 100% one for all is just absolutely mind-blowing. I think everybody that witnessed this episode for the first time, even manga readers, are probably blown away just by the sheer design of Izuku's quirk and just how much power, raw power, he was exerting when he went 100%. We knew that Izuku is capable of some of the things he's demonstrated within this episode. For instance, being able to propel himself with air pressure. We've seen this done through All Might throughout the series before, he lost everything that remained of his quirk one for all. We've seen him use punches that have, wind pressure. We've seen him jump from one city to the other to get to All for One. We know that wind pressure is a big thing that accompanies One for All. And seeing Izuku kind of demonstrate that for the first time just goes to show the sheer power of what he can do. When he kicks at 100% and launches himself into the air, you literally see the entire arena that, Togata and Overhaul have been fighting in, and even Izuku and Nighteye, you see the entire arena just get blown apart, the ceiling starts coming undone, and Izuku launches into the air in literally a fraction of a second. It's so quick, he really has no time to really process what freaking happened in that moment. That's how fast it was. The wind pressure literally sucked him straight up, and he had no idea. And you gotta imagine the speed of that, which we get to see the demonstration of Izuku's speed throughout the episode when he actually faces Overhaul in midair. And this is kind of the big point I want to talk about. So, one of the big things you can notice from this fight is that it was not a fair fight. It was not even whatsoever for Overhaul versus Izuku. Overhaul had no chance. No chance whatsoever when you really take a moment to analyze the fights. It made it appear like he might have had a chance, but he didn't. When you look at everything that happened when Izuku started to go 100%, Overhaul was like a frailing body bag. He couldn't do anything. He could not even face Izuku to dodge his attacks. He could not take Izuku's attacks. He was literally paper mache before Izuku, and to even demonstrate even further of how strong Izuku's attacks were and wind pressure was, when Izuku was going in to finish him off, to do the final punch to Overhaul's face, you saw the very body that Overhaul's been using from his subordinates just disintegrate around him, and then Izuku lands the punch and then Overhaul is shot out of it. It's such a quick transition scene that honestly many can miss it, but it's just ridiculous to see the sheer force of the wind pressure of Izuku's punch before it even lands on Overhaul and he starts being shot straight to the ground. That is insane. So Izuku's wind pressure alone is so frightening, in fact, that you don't even need to think about the raw strength behind the punch. This is stuff that All Might was capable of. Think about this for a second. This is the power All Might was using against All For One. That shows how strong All For One was and how strong All Might was to face the opponent with what he had. So, to go further though, Izuku was able to maintain his balance in midair. You can see constantly throughout the fight, he's rotating around Overhaul as he's getting higher and higher. It's kind of like he was literally using the wind. He was using his feet to propel himself, and the wind was slowly dragging him up and all that, keeping Overhaul kind of like in a vortex, and then as he got above Overhaul, he went straight down for a slam, propelled himself, and we know the rest. So it's just kind of insane, honestly, just to see how powerful 100% is with no repercussions at all, which gets into the next segue. This obviously, like I said, is a temporary glimpse into the future. This is just what the future will be like, what we will see from probably the end game of the story. And the only reason why Izuku was capable of this was because of a character known as Eri. One of the main plot points of this entire arc was to save Eri. This episode had a lot of emotional moments when it came to Eri. And obviously, we get to see the first look and demonstration of what Eri's quirk really is and why Overhaul has wanted to maintain his grasp on her since the very beginning of this arc. Eri has a quirk called Rewind. Her quirk fundamentally can reverse the effects of people. We see it demonstrated through all living objects, honestly, not just people, but we even see rats. So you could say this kind of extends to maybe all living organisms can be reversed, but the question is, could it also be applied to non-organics? Could it be applied to, let's say, buildings? It's not really explained whatsoever, but we didn't see any buildings or anything getting rewinded within this episode, but honestly, though, they were in midair, so we really couldn't have known in the first place, even if, let's say, non-organic matter could be manipulated in the first place. So that's still up in the air. But the point is, though, Eri's quirk is capable of rewinding events of what happens to a living creature's body. For instance, example, when Izuku uses his 100%, normally we know what would happen. His bones and everything would snap like paper mache, and he would be flailing around in the air. We've seen this at the beginning of the story. It's hilarious, but it's also deadly. He cannot utilize his quirk because his body just cannot take it. And you see, in that fraction of a second when he launched, he felt no pain, he had no idea what happened, but Eri's quirk rewinded the very effects on his body and the damage he sustained from using 100%. That is honestly ridiculous, because this basically null and voids the repercussions of Izuku's quirk, and he can use Eri like a backpack lolly endlessly without any problems to fight a battle. Obviously, Izuku's not going to throw a little girl into a fight, but if he was a bad person, or if Eri was fine with it, he could hypothetically have Eri on his back on a constant and use his power fully to be able to fight any opponent that he wants. So Eri is a pretty deadly gadget for Izuku when you really think about it. But going further into her quirk, though, besides just the rewinding of Izuku's injuries, it brings up another question. You see Overhaul even mention that he was making a serum to eradicate the quirk factor within the human body. But also, he was going to offer a serum to be able to bring back the quirk for heroes that want to combat against the villains. So Overhaul effectively would have a monopoly on both sides. He could dictate which side is going to win, the villains or the hero side, perfectly control the entire structure of the world itself. It's a pretty scary thing, but honestly, Overhaul could do it if he was able to continue to manufacture this rewind type drug to be able to constantly reverse someone's quirk or bring it back. So Eri's quirk quirk can kind of rewind the effects of what her rewind already did. That was obviously what was established within this episode, so that brings up another question. So if Eri can rewind her very effects she does to someone, what is her limitations? Where does it necessarily stop? Does it stop upon a person's death? Can she revive people? Can she theoretically reverse everything and bring back, let's say, One for All Might? I mean, could she fix All Might? There is a lot of questions that Eri's quirk kind of brings up, and this is kind of the biggest debate that manga readers had when this part happened within the manga. I know for a fact I debated it heavily when this came out in My Hero Academia's manga for the first time. I'm like, look, I love Eri, I love this arc, I love My Hero Academia, but I'm going to point out something where this could obviously go down a route where it lacks tension. And if I didn't love this series, like if I didn't love My Hero Academia, I wouldn't mention this fact. Like, if I didn't care about it, I wouldn't mention it. But because of how much I love My Hero Academia as a story, I want to mention the fact that Eri's quirk is so busted, in fact, that she could potentially be used as a plot device to remove all tension throughout the story, and we don't necessarily want that. Because imagine if she rewinds Izuku's very wounds on his arms, and the repercussions of his effects of fighting and breaking his arms are gone now. I mean, yes, he learned his lesson, but it would not continue the lasting consequences of what happened with it earlier in the story, and also the wounds he sustained after fighting Muscular. I just feel like Eri's quirk is definitely something that could lead to some problems within the story. That's what I always thought when I saw this for the first time, and I understand why some watchers of this for the first time might be very concerned, but I want to just be straight up. At this time, there really is nothing to worry about, I'm going to say that, but I can understand the worries because Eri's quirk is such a vague mystery with Rewind that could lead into some very troublesome areas for the story. But so far, Horikoshi, I think, has done a very good job with Eri as a character, so I don't think you really need to worry about that. So anyways, let's talk about the scene with Nighteye. Nighteye within this episode had a very big role, even though he was very, very passive in this episode in terms of dialogue. Like, he didn't have much dialogue. There was a lot of emotion within his scenes when it showed him throughout the episode. Like the beginning of the episode when Izuku first demonstrated his 100% One for All and launched himself into the air, you had Nighteye look at him, and the wind pressure that was going around his face, and he looks up, and you could just see he knew in that moment what was going on. He already knew what Izuku was doing. Despite just even seeing the future, he knew that Izuku was using 100%, using the very quirk that Nighteye himself said that he didn't think that Izuku deserved. And he's looking at Izuku, and you could just see in his eyes, his face, there's sadness, frustration, loneliness. There's so much within that face. There's so much you can kind of pull out of that one scene alone, and it's honestly heartbreaking because you could just see that in that moment when Izuku launched himself, he's like, it's happening as I predicted again, and also this person that I didn't want to have the quirk is using this quirk, and, you know, we're all going to die. It just, there's so much emotion in that one scene. As the fight carries on, though, he wants to watch with his own eyes. He wants to see what happens next. And when he sits and watches the conclusion of the episode with us, he says to everybody, I have not seen this future. This brings up a lot of questions. The question is, Izuku somehow managed to change the very future that Nighteye saw. What does this mean necessarily? Why? Why is the future changed? So there is obviously a lot of ways you can depict this. There is no right answer, honestly, because, I mean, there isn't really an answer given. So, basically, you could assume that maybe the reason why he thought Izuku died was because maybe when he was watching, he watched the ending conclusion, and, like, he didn't continue to watch Eri rewinding her quirk. So Eri might have messed up the very timeline because of how her quirk works. Because it rewinds, it probably messes up with the overall flow of time itself, because she's literally reversing time on that person. So it most likely clouded Night-Eye's very quirk, because there was nothing that could really happen. It was a future that was unpredictable because of what Eri was capable of. That's a way to really depict that. Maybe it wasn't because Izuku was capable of it, but it was because Eri was capable of even changing the future because of how Rewind is. But whatever the case may be, whatever happened, what's the big point of Night-Eye's segment throughout the episode is that at the final sequence before the ending song plays, you see Night-Eye smile. And this is a big moment. It's basically like saying Izuku saved Night-Eye. He didn't just save Eri, but he saved Nighteye, because Nighteye has been in suffering and despair for a very long time, because he truly feels like he's the one that killed All Might and caused everything that's happening. He feels responsible for it. So seeing Izuku twist the future, no matter how it happened, if it was because his quirk just doesn't always work, or it's because of Eri, or just Izuku, whatever the case may be, he was saved in that moment, and the smile was something that was just truly heartbreaking, because he, in that very moment, was happy to know that maybe there is a possible future for All Might, and he might not have to die. Speaking of dying, though, there is a big point that needs to be talked about. Obviously, throughout this episode, Nighteye is talking, but it's clear that his wounds are something that is absolutely frightening. When you take a moment to see the scene that depicts the back end of him, you see the boulder or the spike straight through his lower part of his body. And obviously, the way it is lodged in there is probably slowing down his death or blood loss. Because if you've ever heard about something like, let's say in a story or whatever, when someone's impelled by an arrow or some sharp object or a pole or something goes straight through them, it said you should break the arrow off and leave it in until you can get proper treatment. Because if you were to remove the entire arrow, it could cause more blood loss, and also organs can fall out. That's pretty much what you could see clearly from the scene that depicts Night-Eye's backside, is that because of how much loss there is and how the spike is literally within his body, if they were probably to remove that very boulder from outside of his body, he would probably die instantly, because that's probably the only thing that's really supporting his body at the moment and keeping him alive. If that is removed, it's probably lights out. So the question is, can Eri rewind him, or is it too late for him? That's the big question I think many are going to have after this episode. But I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts, how you felt about, the episode. How do you feel about Izuku literally smiting down Overhaul kind of like a god? I mean, it was kind of like divine judgment when Izuku went down with a punch. Just tell me your honest thoughts. But I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.